Hi, Peter Charles here, Folk to Life Fly Fishing. And today let's look at what it takes to get started in fishing for pike. A lot of people don't realize you can fly fish for pike, but it's very common. In fact, when I first started fly fishing, I was fishing for panfish, bass, and pike. There was no trout water where I lived, so everything was warm water for me. So I got into fishing for pike fairly early, and it's a ton of fun. One of the big things about fishing for pike is that when we fish with spinning gear or bait casting gear, we can often get the pike in fairly easily. They are sprinters, if you want to think of it in those terms. So they gas out quickly. And so you get this intense fight, then they come in like a log. Well, with fly fishing, we can't retrieve them that fast, so they recover. And now we get another fight, and then a third one, and then a fourth one. The fight just keeps going on because the fish recovers and goes again. So fly fishing with a fly rod pike fishing with a fly rod is an awful lot of fun. So let's see what's involved with getting started in fishing for pike. Well, really the issue for us as fly fishers is we have to cast a very large fly. So something like this. I mean, this is a perch pattern. Now, it does slick down when it gets wet, but that's a honking big fly. And there's bigger ones than that, harder ones than that to cast. So if you're going to cast a really big fly for a pike, you need a substantial line, which means you need a substantial rod. Typically, rods in the 8 to 10 weight class are usually used for pike, and that's mostly because of the size of the line we're casting. I mean, you would have no trouble getting the average pike in on a 7 or an 8 weight rod, but trying to cast a fly on a 7 weight would start to get difficult. Even on an 8 weight, it can get marginal. So the trick is to have the right kind of line. Now, this is an airflow sniper line. Now, I use this in the salt water for striped bass, but it does the same job as a pike line. It's overweight, it's very heavy, and it has a very blunt front taper, and the head is short. And those are the characteristics you want in a fly line. A short head, around 30 to say 32 feet, 33 feet. Even under 30 feet is even better. A blunt front taper that's around maybe 3 or 4 feet long, and an overweight head. I mean, this in a 10 weight is 425 grains. Now, you may not know the grain system, but a normal 10 weight in the AFTMA scale is only 280. So this is 425. I mean, this is like, I don't know, close to a 14 weight. So the idea behind that line is to have this massive amount of weight at the front end to drive that big fly, especially if you have to cast it against the wind. So the key to good pike fishing is to get the right kind of line. And I ran into that problem myself when I went and got back into pike fishing about 20 years ago. I went out and bought a pike line, a 10 weight pike line for my 10 weight rod. Unfortunately, it was a standard weight 10 weight, so it was an awful lot lighter than that 10 weight. And you cast 30, 40, 50 feet fine. Once you get beyond that, it was hopeless. Couldn't do a thing with it. And one day I got a brainwave, I put it on my 8 weight, and bingo, it worked like a charm. So you have to get that overweight line to work. So read the manufacturer's literature very carefully. So Airflow, for example, would be a sniper line or the Bass Muskie taper. In Rio, it will be Outbound. There's other ones as well out there for other companies. But make sure it's an overweight line and it's got a short head and a really blunt front taper. And it even helps if there's a bit of the mass in the front end. So that kind of line is going to make your life easy. You can use a floating line, no problem. I've done a lot of pike fishing with floating lines, but an intermediate line doesn't hurt. And this is whoopsie daisy. This is an intermediate line that I use in salt water, but I would use this for pike as well, along with the floater. So I probably carry both with me, maybe even a full sinker as well, in order to get. You know, if you're fishing deeper water in a lake, you might want to get down. You might find the pike are hanging around 10 to 15 feet because of temperature. So you need a line that'll get it down there. So typically if you're fishing lakes, you're going to be using a floater, an intermediate, and a full sinker if you want to really cover the water. But at certain times of the year, when pike are in the shallows, a floater will work just fine. Now, the other thing is pike have teeth. And if you don't have the right kind of leader, you can end up with a lot of lost flies. One of the things you can do is use hard saltwater mono. That works fine, but you will have to replace it. After 1 or 2 fish, you'll start to get chewed up, and you have to put a new one on. So something around 30, 40, 50 pound hard saltwater mono will do the job. A lot of people will use this. Now this is knottable wire. I think this is 20-pound test. And you can tie knots, so you can build your own leaders. You can actually tie knots in this like mono. I would recommend you learn the Homer Rhodes knot for this. I found that knot is the best for using this material, and it's a very, very easy knot to tie. So if you learn the Homer Rhodes knot, you'll be able to knock these together pretty quickly and make your own leaders. The other thing you can use, believe it or not, is these leaders meant for spinning rods. As long as it's a light one, don't try to use a really heavy one, but use a short, light one, and they work just fine. They'll cast just fine. You won't even notice it's on the end of your line. It's really not substantially different from this one. You know, they're about the same weight in all. If you get 6 inches of this or 12 inches of that, this is probably a little bit heavier. And, I should say, you can also put snap swivels on these things. So, you know, you can actually make your own leaders, or you can buy them. Just go with something light, that's all. And it'll work just fine. So what you really need are seriously big flies for pike, perch pattern, lovely. You need wire for your leaders, and you need a really chunky line to cast these flies in these leaders. You put that together and you can go fishing for carp. Sorry, for pike. I've got pike and carp on the mind here. So you can go fishing for pike. And trust me, they're an awful lot of fun, especially top water. When they come up and smash a fly, it's just an incredible feeling. So, you know, if you've got a lake nearby that has pike in it, give it a try. They're a lot of fun. Cheers.